lost the agreement.
All right, well, thank you all for coming today. As many of you know, this is the Distinguished Lecture Series as part of the IGERT program, which is a PhD fellowship program funded by the National Science Foundation. And part of that program is to bring in world-renowned speakers related to our topic of smart environments and health assistance and so forth. So today we have Michael Youngblood, who comes to us from Xerox PARC. I've known Michael for a long time. He got his PhD at the University of Texas Arlington in 2005. He worked with Diane on establishing, and me, I guess, establishing the first kind of major smart home project, which was called MavHome, which Mav is Mavericks, which is the UT Arlington mascot. But from there, he moved to University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and I guess is currently an associate professor still there in computer science, although he's in transition, I believe.
Actually, officially ended in July.
Okay. So, but while he was there, Michael also has done a lot of work in the game AI arena and has led several conferences in the area, and I guess still dabbles in that in his current work. So.
Yeah, I guess I should give plug-in for Flares 27 if you want to submit anything. I'm the conference chair for Flares 27. And Pensacola Beach is an awesome location. Really, trust me, I checked it out. So.
I've been there. That's good.
Yep. November 18th is the deadline for me.
Okay. All right. Well, take it away.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to the lovely campus of Washington State University. So I thought I'd start off by telling you a little bit about PARC. How many of you are familiar with PARC? Maybe we should allow how many have no idea what PARC is? Raise your hand. Okay, so it was, well, sort of, some of you. Okay, so PARC is in the San Francisco Bay Area, and this is where Palo Alto is, essentially almost halfway between San Francisco and San Jose and the West End Peninsula region. It's a lovely three-story facility built into Coyote Hill. It's in the front there, overlooking Palo Alto and the San Francisco Bay. And we do internships all with your PhDs. So if you're interested, you can apply for our internship programs. A little bit about PARC if you don't know the history. It was founded in 1970 as Xerox PARC. Did a few things along the way, laser printing, first PCs, Ethernet. WYSIWYG, a lot of times are attributed with inventing the mouse. The mouse was actually invented in the SRI, but the WYSIWYG and the GUI were invented at PARC, so I say that we actually made the mouse useful, gave us something to do. Corporate ethnography, just going out and actually understanding what people do and how to improve their workflows and the performance of corporations was pioneered at PARC. Along with a few other things, ubiquitous computing, and Mark Weiser most famously coined ubiquitous computing, had this vision that eventually you'd be walking around with what are now smartphones in your pocket. And as part of that, Palm Pilots and the PARC Pad, which was around in the mid-90s, was the precursor to the tablets were invented at PARC. Probably heard of collaborative filtering. We did a lot of AI model-based systems, and more recently, so 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, they actually incorporated themselves. They became a subsidiary of Xerox, and so it's just PARC, a Xerox company. Which means that about a third of our business is working with other companies besides Xerox, and we also do a lot of support with government as well still with Xerox, which has become a different company. 4 years ago, they acquired another company called ACS, and so they're kind of like IBM services, where they're involved in parking services and healthcare and lots of other issues. And we do clean tech and print and flexible electronics, which can be pretty exciting, especially when we look about putting wearable sensors on the body, which have implications for smart homes. As well as in the quantified self movement and for being able to tell form and elements of behavior change. And these are our general focus areas, just to give you some background, kind of look through those. And I'm working in health and wellness in a group called Augmented Social Cognition. I think we might change our name to Interactive Intelligence. So this is a good way to describe what we do. So the work I'm going to present today is on how we leverage social science and artificial intelligence to actually improve health and wellness in mobile smartphone applications. And this is work that in collaboration with a bunch of others at PARC, primarily Hong Du from Ethnography Services, did a lot of the interviewing and helped with the study information, and was very instrumental in this work. So he and I usually present this together. This is a snapshot of the team. Not everybody's 100% on this project, but to give you some, there's a number of people you might recognize. Ashwin Ram, who used to be a Georgia Tech professor. Pete Caroli is our principal scientist in cognitive psychology, who you probably know him from information foraging theory, as well as myself and Jesse and Les, Jonathan, Shane, Hong Lu, and some of our interns to help every summer. So our vision actually is to create a scalable, mobile, ubiquitous social wellness solution that leverages proven behavioral and social science techniques to improve health outcomes and reduce healthcare costs for millions. The biggest problem we see is and I'm not going to motivate the problem. I think we all realize that there's a problem in healthcare, that the nation's getting larger. We're getting a little sicker, and if you want some of the background, I'm sure this group is probably well familiar with it, right? So the biggest problem is that now we do have targeted interventions that do help people, but how do we scale that? How do we make something available to everybody? So I'll talk a little bit about what motivates us, and some of the talk will be, I can't go deep into some of the technology, especially since we're being recorded, but if you want to talk offline, we can go a little bit deeper, and I'll give you kind of the vision where we're going, and I'm going to talk about one of our pilot studies, the latest pilot study, so we'll get pretty concrete. So we're motivated by the theory of planned behavior, which looks at the attitudes towards behavior, the subjective norms, and the perceived behavioral control, and how they impact individuals' intention in order to affect their behavior. And some of the classic literature, back to Skinner's operant conditioning, B.J. Fogg's tiny habits, all impact how we think about behavior change and habit formation. And Pete's background, he was one of Anderson's students, so we see a little bit of ACTAR and come underneath some of what we do. So we're also influenced by social psychology. And in the mobile space, we're very interested in how people interact, the symbols they use, and what discourse looks like, given the tools, and the meanings that they ascribe to those certain conditions. We sometimes, in some of our studies, we see people, they'll actually talk more in pictures than words. In some cases, they talk more in words. Sometimes they talk more in just actions by liking or high-fiving. And it's interesting to kind of study those forms and try to encourage the forms that work best for people and to contribute together in a team. And we look at this team-based formation of groups in order to engage them. And so because of that, you see the social exchange theory comes into play, how they form these relationships, how they judge their value, the benefit of being in that relationship with the team versus the cost of being in that team, and the social capital that they build inside those systems and how they relate with each other, and the influence that individuals have within those team structures. And the use of teams is to create accountability. And of course, we go back to the literature, mostly management literature, about how you bond teams. And you'll see a little bit of a thread of intelligent tutoring techniques. And then from my own background, we add in some game mechanics and some rewards. Mostly you see badges, and you'll get this kind of flow theory that I'll talk about in a minute that progresses with the team as they're moving through their different programs. And we also use incentive strategies, sometimes looking at what works better to incentivize them up front or to incentivize them on the back end to see what works with different teams in different conditions. The thread of what we do as far as delivery in our interactive techniques is we try to put people in the Csikszentmihalyi high flow area. So how many are familiar with theory of flow? Some of you? Very interactive. So just Matt knows. So the idea here is that when someone is in an interactive system, then they're going to bring a certain skill set to that system. And then as the system provides challenges to them, it needs to match their skill set. If their skills are too high for the challenge, they're just going to be bored. And And if the challenge is too high for their skills, they're going to reach this level of anxiety. They're going to be afraid to interact in it. So we want to keep people with the right challenge for the right skill and keep them in this flow. And this is the theory used to describe lots of systems, including that time you get when you're working in your workstation and you just hit that right moment. You got the right task in front of you with the right set of challenges and the right skill set for it. So we also make sure that our goals are clear in the system, that the feedback is immediate, and we try to provide that balance between the skills you have and the challenges presented in front of you. So I'm going to talk about our instantiation of these ideas into an app called Fiddle. And I'll first walk you through Fiddle and give you a kind of sense of what's going on. You can kind of see the underlying thread of these influences. And then we'll talk a little bit about the architecture and go into the efficacy of it. So you first start, if you logged in, selecting a challenge. And we have a number of challenges that were created by experts. That doesn't normally go this fast, it's speeding up. Once you select a challenge, you'll create a team and you'll establish your own profile in the system. And then once you establish that profile, we get you to affirm that you're going to commit to that team and give you a basic tutorial that I'll actually walk through next to show you the components of the main screen. Excuse my sweating to run across campus to get here. Okay, I'm not blaming you, Maureen. Okay, so the central focus when you come into the app is the dashboard. The dashboard is consistent. This is a little bit different how, kind of a new form. If you're used to app space, you kind of would see this as a 3 or 4 year old way of doing this would be tabs, right? You'd have 3 different views. And we've actually found that if you separate this into different views, you actually lose something in this process. So that the 3 combined elements here actually help engage someone. So the first part is a program delivery mechanism. So these are your goals for today. And you can move back and forth in time and then go back to today just by clicking on the arrows. And what do you think the circles here mean? Do we want to guess? Somebody? Success. Right. Success? You think, does it seem like it's blank there, like you want to complete something?
Yeah.
Priority. What's that? What you've done for the day? What you've done for the day, yeah, good. So a little bit of interface testing, we found that it'll make perfect sense in a minute. And then when you think about it, you always think that, boy, if one of those circles is not filled in, I'm missing something. And that driving, the kind of the symbology we use to drive people to say, I have to complete something here helps. So this is program delivery, and it's program delivery at the pace of the individual. We work to try to deliver at the pace of the individual within the context of the team. So the whole team kind of has a delta they need to get to from the beginning to the end over the course of time. But the individual path that people take is supposed to be very customized, depends on how the challenge designer actually builds it. The idea is to build very customized challenges, kind of move you through at your own pace, and with activities that are appropriate for you in order to meet that final delta. The middle part, the kind of analytics part, gives you your progress and your team's progress over time. And then, of course, this looks like a standard activity feed from Facebook, right? With one exception, we have something in here, Fittlebot, and I'll discuss Fittlebot in a few minutes. So kind of walk through here. If you had a daily goal, you would select the goal, it would open up and say, I've got to walk 15 minutes. If I wanted a little bit more information on that, I could click on here and get information about what I need to do to satisfy that. I could rate it, I could flip on the back to get a little bit more information, and maybe more information than you really want to know. But people keep coming back, so there's a lot of information at the fingertip. If I want to go back and forth to see what's available, I can swipe back and forth and see other things that are related to this activity, and then when I'm done, I can come back here and then I can report that I completed it, or almost completed it. Once you get a change up there, and then I can discuss with my team or share with my team, including I can add a picture either from my gallery or take a picture on the spot. So of course this is auto-updated to everybody in the team, and then they can high-five it, and then you get instant feedback, and people can comment on how you're doing. And then if you're impatient, you can just pull the update, and then you can even high-five other people and of course comment on them. So if you click on your progress, you can actually see the individual progress for the rest of the team. You can click on the individual and get to their profile. As well as when you're done with that, you can see what you have to do for the week. And this is what the system is trying to get you to do as far as the set of tasks for the week. Then as you progress through the system, you can earn badges, mostly around things that we want you to do, that reward activities that promote you to use the app, and a little bit of exploration as well, to try to get you to do new things. And so this is a lot to take in an interface, and of course we want to interact and customize this for the individual. And we also need to get information to build out the user and team profiles, those user models. So we've introduced a character, an artificial character, Fittlebot. And so Fittlebot, we use it to deliver the salient tips depending on the activities that you are doing for the day. It looks at the team feed, tries to engage the team in conversation. It tries to build out your user profile. We're working on making it interact more with you, to do pointed questions, to fill out certain elements of that user model, and as well as offer substitutions, help you refine those goals. There's a lot more to this. You can actually talk directly to each other, point-to-point messages. You can actually go view all the content. There's a lot of material behind that. And it's accessible through the classical hamburger menu item there. So the key technologies that are behind this deal with the social gamification, the mobile, and analytics work, including integration of Fitbit and other quantified self devices that we're looking at. And with the announcement today of the M7 chip on the iPhone 5S, we can see that we're able to do more motion sensor processing behind the scenes. Then all goes into building a user model and a team model, and being able to deliver content with your preferences and add knowledge to your individual as you progress through the different set of challenges. It's also connecting one challenge to another. So you see a lot of programs will just deliver one program, but what's the next program? So if you start a Couch to 5K program, what's the 5K to 10K program? Or what's next for you? So we look at being able to look at others like you in a collaborative filtering sort of way, and being able to suggest what's the next step that you might take after you complete a challenge. And also, how do we move your team from challenge to challenge? So underneath the hood, we currently use youth experts. We've been using personal trainers and other people that have programs. We're looking at opening this up to anybody, possibly just doing general authoring, to create a challenge into the system. On the back end, we do provide analytics of how people use that challenge and the substitutions they make. And so that provides the content. For the user, we're looking at the peer coaching mechanism through the team, engaging the team, and building a critical mass. We try to get team sizes of 8 to 12 individuals. We find when we get 8 to 12 individuals, then there's always somebody available on the system. People will respond quickly to you. It's almost like you're never alone. And when you have a critical mass of team members, now what happens if you get above 12, it's just too noisy. It just starts to become impersonal. And actually when we see you get below 4, it just seems like nobody's there. But when you get in this kind of 8 to 12 range, you start to have this connectedness, and it's amazing what happens. I was testing one of the earlier pilots out, and I was at a conference, and we had a team size of 12, and somebody on there is like, oh, you're probably about to have lunch, and I know you're out of town, so make sure you eat healthy. And no kidding, like the buffet bar was right here, and I was like about ready to grab the plate, the buffet bar. And I will tell you, it's extremely powerful when one of your team members, and you feel that accountability to them, contacts you in that way. And so we've noticed that when you get to that perfect size and that right set of interaction, you start to automatically build this just from your own team members. And the idea is FiddleBot can sit back. It doesn't have to interact if the team is sustaining its own interactions. But if it needs to, it can go in and prompt and try to get people interacting. So you see those game mechanics. Conversation shaping is getting conversation started, trying to guide it. We're looking at a deeper natural language understanding and trying to do more natural language generation to be able to possibly move the conversation. Particular interest in this area could be when people have misconceptions about things and you want to provide them information. We can actually link to any of those cards, and you can actually link to them externally, so we can actually send you email. If you don't have it on your phone, you open the email, you click on it, it'll bring you to those information cards. So we look at that conversation, we look at these interactions, we look at data from other devices, and the activity that the user is doing, and we use those to build a user model and a team model. The team model actually happens on the server side. This is a combination of a client-server architecture. We try to do a lot actually on the phone. And then the planning engine, it's a little bit more of a scheduler than a planning engine. Looks at your user model, your progression, and tries to adapt those goals that you see on that top row. And then also notifies the FiddleBot through a coaching engine to provide nudges if needed, if your team is not providing them, to be able to interact with the user. Sometimes it's I haven't heard from you in a while. And then the latest extension we're looking at is we actually will go to email. If we haven't heard from you in a while, we'll go to email. And then if you've just left, we'll leave you alone. So the platform is kind of standard client-server architecture, runs in the cloud. We can talk more offline if you're interested in this. Was built on the Django Python framework with some team user modeling, and then a lot of the user modeling for the individuals actually stored up on the phone and sync back to the database. Mostly what happens is data synchronization. So being committed to eating our own dog food, we've actually went through a series of you ever heard that phrase? So when you make something, you need to test it out in yourself. We ran a number of pilot tests internally. We finally opened it up to all of PARC. So PARC has about 250 people in it. We had 23 people respond. And so we ran this 8-week challenge. And this is significant because, so the personal trainer said, well, if you can get somebody to do something for 8 weeks, that's a pretty big task. So in most cases, and you look at most of the literature, and if you even go back to what happens in January, everybody goes to lose weight in January, how long does that last? Well, if you look at the literature, it lasts about 3.5 weeks. So at 3.5 weeks, about that third week, what happens? All the advertisements change from all of the buy your health equipment to buy a big screen TV for football, right? So especially in personal trainers and health type challenges or health type programs, getting past the 3.5 week point is a big barrier if you can keep someone engaged past that point. And it's about 6 to 8 weeks where you actually start to see body changes. And so if we can get someone engaged for that duration, that would be a big win. But there's like a 90% exponential drop off after about 3.5 weeks. Probably anybody's involved in most of the systems out there. So for full disclosure, we did incentivize this. The incentive was that if you completed 90% of all your tasks for 7 of the 8 weeks, you would get a $50 gift certificate to either Sports Authority, Whole Foods, or Amazon. Pretty low by corporate standards. And you got a entry into a raffle. So if you, we gave a $10 t-shirt, so everybody gets a $10 t-shirt, just if you participate. And then you'd be entered into a raffle. So if you completed at a high achievement, you would get a raffle ticket. If your team participated overall for the duration, you would get another raffle ticket. So you can, and there was another participation raffle ticket. So you can get up to 3 raffle tickets, and we gave away 5 iPad minis. So to put that into some perspective, for corporations, a lot of corporations will incentivize it about $1,200 a year for their employees. So for doing different programs. Yeah, so now the professor's going to go back to Washington and complain. But yeah, so the $359 iPad mini possibility and the $50 if you compete were the incentives for this. And because I might forget later, ultimately at the end, nobody ever said that incentives had any impact whatsoever on what they were doing. In fact, yeah, they just said they didn't think about it. And especially since I know that we were late on getting some of that, nobody hounded me daily. But there was some impact that we didn't study. For full disclosure, we didn't study what the impact that was. So there's two challenges that were delivered, neutral walking and stress busting, and they're both professionally designed by Bay Area personal trainers. So to give you kind of the basics, so both 8 weeks, they both have the same nutrition component. The nutrition component was focused on 4 nutrition habits, which kind of started off just as mindful eating, watch what you eat, which a lot of people said was very powerful, to a basic form of food journaling by the end of the 8 weeks. And they were staggered overlaps. So you kind of start with 2 weeks and then get the next 2 weeks, and they kind of overlap. So you carry on mindful eating for 3 weeks, and then you'll do the next 2 weeks, primary 2 weeks then, and they'll have a follow week. And then the idea was to get someone walking. And this program would fully adapt to you. It wasn't a very rigid program. The idea is we want to get you walking 3 times a week for 15 minutes a day. And at the end of it, you were walking 45 minutes, up inclines with interval exercises in between. And for days that you weren't doing the walking, you were supposed to stretch. And so if you decided to do them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that was fine. If you kind of put them off, you can only put them off till Friday, then it'd be, there's only 3 days left, you gotta walk. Except at the end when it gets to 5 days, then it really wants you to walk. So it would adjust with the individual, and you could tell it to adapt to change. You could just say, I'm not ready to do that today. It would say, okay, go ahead and stretch. Stress busting was a more rigid program, the same 4 nutrition habits. The workouts were rigid goals in this case, designed by a personal trainer to reduce stress. Start off Mondays, you did an upper body workout, Wednesdays a full body workout, and Friday a lower body workout, with some options there. So if you weren't ready to do, there's a workout in each of the 5, there's 5 exercises, each 10 out, so you can do a lower or a higher form of it. And the idea was to actually, you may start at the lower form and try to get you to do something more advanced by the end. With recovery days in between and a rest on Sunday. So I want to talk a little bit about engagement, because one of the things that we're really trying to do with this app, we're trying to get past that 3.5 week point. We want to engage the user, we want them to use it. So in order for the interventions to be useful, we've got to have you actually using the app. So it ended up being, so 23 people started in the challenges. 2 dropped out because of other commitments. I think actually 1 changed jobs in there. And then 2 of them had technology issues that they ended up dropping out on. Ended up, because there's a lot of traveling and some people were in India, that being a fairly global pilot, but with a fairly high session rate. So we've seen that people were spending about 84 seconds per session and looking at about 4.3 screens. And if you compare this to, there's a large survey done across all apps. This is about 15% longer than the app average of 71.5 seconds. And so we had up to 54 users actually in the system. It's cut off a little bit. So it goes up, peaks up a little bit over here. Let's see that. So this is the daily average users. Here you can see it better if we just smooth it out. So there's 19 users in the week. There's a few raises here. There are a few people from management want to come and take a look around and participate. And then we see a little bit of the researchers in here looking, which registers them. But roughly we see that kind of core 19. We do drop off with that last week. We think this is because Nevada lent us their weather for this week, and so we got into like near 100. But we didn't track that effect. It's just what people have said in interview. So so part of the engagement is looking how many screens people look through. And so we see at the beginning this big bump. You know what they're doing there? Exploring, right. Yeah. So Priya Dixit and I reported in SIGGRAPH in 2007 about interactive systems, about this novice user exploration effect, and that's what they're doing. They're exploring the space. And then you kind of see it steady off. So they're trying to figure out what they need to do. And you have a fairly consistent, so you want this big long tail, especially since we're not adding new users to the system. So you only see the bump of the exploration, and then you want a thick tail. That way it gets us consistent people looking, referring, pretty much just interacting with the system after they mastered it. This tapers off really thin, and that becomes a pretty big problem. And if you dig a little deeper, that's kind of smoothed out over the weeks, the 8 weeks. You can see if you focus in on each 2 weeks, you get that big bump. You get peaks here and there. These aren't on consistent days. And then, what do you think happens after the challenge ended? Is it? They're gone? I'm done? Thank you? Yep. Nope, actually they came back. And not only that, we left the system on for 3 weeks after the challenge, and they kept coming back. So this is a very small sample size, so this is really just exploratory prepping for our next much larger sample. So we're not going to claim victory on small sample sizes, and we're preparing for user studies with thousands of users. But this is some initial data that's helpful to understand that if people are using it, they're engaged, and they don't have to be engaged in it. The incentive was fairly low. We see the new users actually spend about 3.5 minutes in the system and look through 8 screens as they're exploring. That's first contact. And then regularly people are spending about a little over a minute looking at 4 screens in it. And overall, people in the system have seen over 200 screens when they come back to the system. So they're spending time consistently coming back into the system. And so we didn't lose them in this process throughout that time. And not only that, they're checking it every day, nearly every day. So most of those sessions are less than a day apart. Now that's average per user, so in typical metrics for looking at this type of engagement, you get these 30, 60, and 90-day retention elements into it. And so what we see over the course, and this is how it charts. So after 30 days, looking at the last week of those 30 days, we have still about 95% of the people using the system. That last week, at the 8th week, when we saw that drop off, we're getting 73%. You can see where it drops off. But it was at 80%. And what they're looking at, so this is how many server interactions, but they're essentially looking, so they're interacting 5 times a day at the beginning, a little under 5 times, and then almost 4.5 times per day for about 6 and then 5 sessions per day. So at the end, you're looking at about 22 sessions per week as people are interacting in the system, down from about 34. And where this fits in relation to other apps. So all health and fitness apps, 30-day roughly starts at 47 with 2.7 uses per week. And then we drop down to 37 and 30% at 90 days. And we're starting up at 94 and dropping to 73 with 23 uses. So the reality of the percentage here is not a useful number at all. What's interesting is how much they're engaged. The fact that they are coming back 20-something times a week into the system, they keep coming back. And there's some explanation for that. Let me dig into some more of the results. So I think we've got something that shows that it's sticky, people are coming back, they're using it, but is it effective? So just to show you the breakdown of participants, so We ended up with 2 neutral walking teams and 4 stress busting teams, 19 participants, 10 male, 9 female, with a pretty large, wide age range, 23 to 77, average age of 43, and a good mix of white, Asian, black, Hispanic, one didn't reveal, and a diverse background, not only researchers, but managers, engineers, administrative staff. So a pretty broad demographic. And we collected both pre and post surveys, the server logs from the interactions on the devices, and we actually conducted post-activity interviews. So we specifically designed surveys that would measure the theory of time behavior elements according in using instructions from the TPB literature. So we asked multiple questions to isolate the effects of particular questions to look to see the different elements of the walking, the nutrition, the stress busting. We also asked weight, we used Cohen's perceived stress level, the IPAC physical activity level, Slunt's healthy eating. We looked at sleep behavior and just took feedback from the challenge at the end. So overall, you see a high satisfaction. These are the qualitative results. So 85% of people were satisfied with their experience. Just under 70% would actually recommend it right off the bat. 70% would be willing to continue using it. In fact, right now we're doing non-incentivized trials, and we have more people coming back into them and wanting to participate still. And interestingly enough, we find that almost 85% of the people actually substituted some of the activities for a different activity. What's important there is that when we want to customize this, we need to build these customizations. And so we're looking at how often people substituted and what they substituted with, and we want to use Fittlebot to elicit those substitutions, capture them, and then be able to reflect them back to people that actually have similar profiles. And this will help make it feel, well, it will be a lot more customized for the individual. So performance. So about 60% of the people in the study are at the higher performance level. Because we had one team of 7 and one team of 4. Then we have some smaller teams. There's actually a faint blue line in here. It kind of follows that path right there. So SB is stress busting and neutral walking. And so we see that we have high compliance in both a stress busting and a neutral walking team. And then in those of these teams, and then the others had various reasons why they were failing. But here's you kind of see that classic, this is what you see that dip between the 3 to 4 week point. It's like a couple teams had it, and then some took the low slope down. Some of this is because these teams were small, and had 3 or fewer people, and in most cases you had one person that stopped participating, and so the impact of that one person is a little magnified here. So inside Fiddle, you do a lot of discussion, or hopefully you do a lot of discussion, you do a lot of interaction. And so we want to look at the impact of the conversational activities and how that might relate to how well you actually performed overall. So there's a standard encoding scheme that we use to bucket the different types of conversation into 5 buckets. And these were coded by 2 researchers independently with 70% overlap. And then they got together and hashed out the others to properly categorize the different conversation elements. But, so these are the high performing teams. These are the teams that are higher than the 63% median range. And if you notice that these teams have high numbers of posts and high numbers of, these are high fives, the liking that we do in the system. And even though it was not the upfront feature, someone figured out how to use a private messages and actually used it quite a bit. We break this down. The teams that were high performing tended to have more social, supportive, shared more in their conversations, and the teams that were not doing as well tended to just report activities. I just did this, and didn't really share or discuss elements of it. They also were ones to report issues they were having, troubles they were having with the system. So in an interview, we found a lot of people, we weren't going for losing weight. A lot of people reported they're losing weight. Some people reported that they were down to a weight that they haven't been to for a long time. We're already seeing people that saw big improvement while losing 7.5 pounds. And we're seeing behavior changes that one of the participants was going to a local amusement park. And they said because they were participating, they thought about it. The fact that they felt accountability to that team, that they weren't gonna eat junk food when they were there. So it did actually curb their behavior. So we look at the survey data. So we don't actually see any significant changes in weight. And their perceived stress level did actually drop, and I'll show you the individual conditions for both neutral walking and stress busting in the next slides. Their physical activity increased pretty significantly. Their healthy eating actually increased, and the sleep behavior, there was no change. And those changes in perceived stress level, physical activity, and healthy eating were all statistically significant changes. And if you break it down to stress busting, so stress busting knows the same nutrition for both. So stress busting, people did actually lower their stress level. So an expertly designed program, but we were able to deliver it effectively through a mobile-based intervention. And their healthy eating also improved. No difference in physical activity actually in that group. Part of it is because they were already exercising. That's how many minutes of exercise they came in. So they're already doing a large amount of exercise. In fact, a few of the participants said that they weren't doing enough exercise, and one of them, when he was supposed to rest on Sunday, decided that they were going to continue running their 6 miles that they normally ran on Sunday. And if you look at neutral walking, which was the plan motivated to get people up off the couch and get moving. So we see a significant increase in getting them up and moving in their activity level, and also in healthy eating. We did a linear regression looking at how much you learn on the healthy eating aspect. And interestingly enough, everybody actually increased their healthy eating habits, but people that kind of started off with bad healthy eating habits actually had a higher increase than people that already knew it, they already had good healthy eating habits. But everybody learned something. So there was no significant weight loss, but of the 19 participants, actually 12 of them lost weight. 4 did not, and 1 was even, and there was 2 that did not actually report. So because we have teams, and we have this hierarchical structure to how people are organized within the challenges, we did this multi-level modeling approach where we took all of the TPB elements as well as the Fiddle contribution as measured by how much they actually talked within the system, how the sharing and high five and commenting, and the system usability score, the SUS metric for how people used it, how usable the system was, to look at how its impact on nutrition completion. As far as, we only had enough people in the nutrition component, there's not enough in the actual walking or the exercise part of it. And we found that the interclass correlation actually is pretty high, attributing to the fact that the teaming aspect actually was in these particular orange variables. So someone's attitude, using Fiddle, and the fact that you can use the system directly contributed to them actually completing nutrition goals. And it was significantly different between the groups that were in those strong teams versus not. And in fact, we see a lot of people that talk about how supporting and motivating the teams are. The fact that they're always there, they're always encouraging them. They are seeing people's progress. In fact, a lot of people, the condition was when they opened up the top screen, they actually left it open, showing everybody's team performance. A lot more people left it that way than leaving it closed. And they like the fact that they're being held accountable in that team. A lot of them brought team members up to speed. They would go so far as to call them, to get them engaged, to reach out to them out of channel, outside of the app, make sure that they were contributing. And I guess not all of these teams actually knew each other. Some knew each other. It was kind of a good mix that came across. Not everybody has worked with each other before. And so even we saw people that were talking about how working with people that they kind of knew brought them a little closer together. They found that it was inspirational when they were sharing stories and their successes and seeing people go out there and do things, and people posting pictures and texting updates, and even sharing their walks. A lot of people use like Runkeeper and then snap their shot from Runkeeper into the system. A lot of people shared walking tips. And then Fittlebot, we had been kind of mulling over how to interact with the users and whether to have some kind of system Chrome interact with them. But it comes out, and we were concerned about putting an artificial character as a team member, how that might be received. And of course, we'd love it if it was well received, because that would give us lots of opportunities in which to interact with the team. Well, fortunately, they did actually like it, most part. So a lot of people, I don't know why there was gender confusion, but there was. So a lot of people, they really liked that Fiddle girl, some call the Fiddle guy. They liked the tips. Some of the tips were timed to go off just when you first interacted. And some of them end up actually just being delivered perfectly at the right moments, and that resonated with a lot of people. They also liked that they were contextual as what their goals were. So if we knew what the goal for the day was, we gave them a contextual tip, oftentimes providing a deeper exploration into what they were doing, and a little progression. So over day after day, you learn a little bit more and a little bit more. And people really liked that delivery. In fact, if you look at the back of that card, there's a lot of information. A lot of people want to get to the information, they would go back and dig into it, but I think it actually is a nice delivery mechanism for people that don't want to read a lot, especially in the mobile space. You don't want them to read, you do want to make it available to people, but you want to slowly deliver content material to someone, help them master it. And there's always this, when you work with a personal trainer constantly feeds you more and more information. And then there's a pool of information from the individual with a personal trainer. And so that's where we're going with Fittlebot. People like that. What they didn't like was that we tried to give this kind of daily status, like this was the most talkative member of the team for yesterday. This is the person that completed everything. These are the people that completed this particular aspect. They didn't like that part at all. So they felt that they're in touch with the team. What you're telling me is redundant. It's not useful. What they really wanted to know was, tell me something that's more interesting. Is this the first time that you've done X when you haven't done it for the last Y number of days? Is this a big milestone for you? Is it a big milestone for me? Have I passed, have I walked every day and I was even putting numbers in there? Could you figure it out? I passed 20 miles. So they wanted something interesting when it comes down to the team and not just the mundane elements. What was also interesting was how people perceive Fittlebot. So in interviews, some people perceive it as a trainer, some people as a leader, some people as a supporter. When we get down to trader, they wanted Fittlebot to personalize more. They wanted to give it more fine-grained suggestions. They wanted to see this personal trainer actually appear out of Fittlebot. So not only were they okay with this artificial team member, they actually wanted the artificial team member to give them more personalized instruction. Now, some teams form and they don't have a natural leader. They just kind of all go with the flow. And we saw that in teams that didn't have strong leaders, and they actually would have preferred an artificial leader. And I think this goes back to some stuff I even learned on Math Home, where sometimes the technology can lead you, and maybe people like it to lead you. Sometimes if the home is making adjustments and you're fine with that, like, hey, the lights went off, it must be time to go to bed, that's okay. Now, this doesn't work for everybody, but there are subsets of individuals and teams that the dynamic works this way, that they do want to actually let the system lead them a little bit more, especially in a group that doesn't have a strong leader. And because they're very supportive with each other, and they have actually embraced, these 19 people really embraced Fittlebot being part of the team. they would like it to support more. They want it to become a full team member. So we have slated a lot of ideas around Fiddlebot, but this pilot study really showed us that there is a nice uptake to people dealing with artificial character inside their team and letting it be part of the team. And some opportunities for us as we understand more about team dynamics in a mobile setting, how we can augment that team in a way that actually will suit and customize that character for that team. Now, of course, not everybody complied. The reasons for complying are kind of the same for every type of study like this. They're workaholics, or they perceive they're workaholics. A lot of them, their team failed. If you're on a team of 2 and one person drops out, you're there by yourself, that's a problem. And we've pretty much learned that the team size of 4 is about the minimum, so we actually now do not allow teams of less than 4. We don't optimize for an individual experience. You could do an individual experience, but if you want to get the most out of it, we found that teaming is what brings accountability. The accountability is what makes it sticky. And if you want to have a good experience, then you need to have at least a team of 4, but preferably closer to that 8 to 12 range, which actually is the same number you find in most social online games. Some people didn't choose the right challenge. So we have a couple things that we're looking at. One, how do we team people if they're not coming into a team that's already formed? And what challenge should you actually take at first? A good entry-level experience with quick results goes a long way. In this case, we had an introductory and a more advanced challenge. If you were at the intro level and you took the advanced, then they just found it too hard. That was very demotivating for that person. Surprising number of device issues, not too many in the whole thing, but a few people had issues. And some of the issues were the fact that they didn't have an iPhone because we were only running iOS. So we gave them an iPod Touch. And so it's really important that you actually have it on the device you use and carry with you. So even having something you stick in your purse as a secondary item, a secondary device. And it's my concern because when you look at older populations, they're shifting from mobiles to tablets. And I'm concerned that they don't carry tablets, and so it may not be as effective in those populations. So which means that there's more work to make better interfaces, possibly in the mobile. A lot of people, because of eyesight, will switch to the tablet. But in our ethnography studies, we've actually observed that most of those people still have their phone with them. They just prefer the larger format of the tablet. Group size, of course, an issue if it's too small. And you have problems. And one odd person upgraded to iOS 7 in the middle of this, and we found we weren't compatible. So a lot of our work right now is, in fact, we're running a study right this minute on Fiddlebot improvements, on more engaged Fiddlebot, looking at making it more of a team coach and a personal coach, and building more of that user model opportunistically through that conversation, and shaping the conversation to get people interacting and also to get information to help build those team and user models. With a limit, we don't try to interact too much, so we just want to seem like a natural team member that may be a little inquisitive at times. So there's some trade-offs we have to do there. Adapting more of the challenges, teaming. So if we can get people from ad hoc around the world who signed up and get them into the right teams, it's going to be successful for them. That's our ultimate goal. Because that's how we can deploy worldwide, and then we get people to team worldwide, and we can really scale. And of course, some regular, in fact, this is our new logo. So if you're looking for it on the App Store, it will be on the App Store shortly. But if you download it, we only actually allowed it, there's a code that unlocks it for certain groups. If you're interested in running a study, or if you're interested in getting your algorithms on Fiddle, we're open to ideas and collaborations. And we do internships in summer. And I was thinking a little bit about smart environment integration. Some things that we're thinking about, but are an issue. So this is all self-report. So adherence or compliance is an issue. How do we know that you are actually doing what you say you're doing? So if we go back to the high achieve, who actually got the $50, so 7 out of 19 people actually got the $50. And to me, it's just an extra piece of information, but either 7 people, I feel that those 7 people were real honest in the fact that the 12 others didn't come forward and they could have easily radioed in the rest. I get a sense that people were actually really honest. And my sense from interview was that people were honest because they were part of a team, and they felt that responsibility to the team members to be honest. So it really did help with that accountability. And that was our general hypothesis, is that we could, through building this accountability and engaging people in the social system with a reasonable and easy interface and system that was always available and in your pocket, that we could form these teams and we could build this accountability and we can help people to accomplish programs and meet goals and just deliver expertly created content. And we did that. The other part of it, if we really get into the scalability, is form. So it's, a personal trainer will tell you it's not just about doing the exercise, but doing the exercise right. And so if we're looking at true scalability and we have people all over the world doing it, we need to make sure that people are not only doing it, but they're actually doing it properly. There's easy ways you may just slight kinematic movements may actually not exercise the same muscle groups you think. So we need to make sure that we have a way to track that and feed that back into the system. A lot of our adaptation has to do with the availability of resources. So if you go back to how do you have people set goals and then create habits, a lot of it starts off with what do you have available. If you don't have a gym available, if I start telling you to go work on equipment in a gym, that doesn't make sense. You may not have the stretchy bands, the spry bands. If you don't have those, what do you have? So a lot of these exercises could be, in fact, when you see substitutions that people already do, they're actually using things that they already have available to them. We could capture that information, we could build a community that curates that, and we can feed it back to individual users to help them accomplish their goals. And people do, in the system, they do feel like they want more information, and so they're very receptive to suggestions. In a smart environment itself, you can report that availability of resources. You can look at environmental reminders to help people, so work in synergy with something like Fiddle, and provide help on contextual awareness. So I think I left a few minutes. Oh, well, we started a little bit late, so I got 2 minutes for questions.
I only have about 20 questions.
We can talk offline
Yeah.
at any time, or call me, email me.
And towards the end, since this was couched somewhat at some level as a competition, do you think anyone dropped out when they realized they weren't going to win against other teams or even against people in their own team? Kind of, they feel that they're just not going to get there?
It's interesting you picked up the topic of competition, because it was a raffle for the thing, but everybody could get the equal amount of tickets, so there really wasn't a competitive element. There are people that wanted to be competitive, but we don't show a leaderboard. Actually, and it's a little bit of a problem we have. So we can have lots of people in the system, but when you're in the system, you don't get the sense that there are other people in the system. You only get the sense of your team. And so the feedback that we got was less about feeling like they were in competition, and more like they felt the team was isolated. They actually wanted to feel and have a sense of how other teams were doing. So we intentionally kind of went across what a lot of people are doing it by not being competitive, by just saying everybody can win, and they went too far by isolating everybody. And then the external part about the incentives, I honestly think that most people forgot there were incentives, just because they weren't hounding us about it, and it seemed like when we actually delivered them, they said, "Oh yeah," it was like they didn't forget about it, but it wasn't a big pull from them. But so I think the opposite is true there, that we didn't have enough competition, or we didn't provide enough visibility into the other teams. So if you're in a system that has 100,000 people in it, people want to feel like the party's going on and there's something going on. But we actually don't want to create a sense of competition. Leaderboards do a bad job of promoting just certain subsets of individuals. They're always at the top, and they're very discouraging. So we have We've done a lot of whiteboard discussions around ways to kind of do a relative way of showing your progress. Kind of saying like, here's your cohort, and this is roughly where you are, but you're never too below, and then, but there's lots of issues in that, and so it's yeah, we have a lot to work with. If you have ideas, we'd love to talk.
I was wondering about that 3.5-week mark.
Mm-hmm.
Since you said that they didn't really get too motivated by the incentives, this might be difficult, but did you brainstorm at all about what to do? You've been focusing on retention, and yet there's this inevitable decline over time. So have you brainstormed about how to catch when that is happening or about to happen and re-engage? Maybe merge teams that are getting too small, if the social impetus is the greatest factor. What are some of the thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. Well, one is trying to not let people be in a situation where they get failed by being in a team too small, and then trying to look at how do you dynamically bring other people in. So, right. So we try to just capture this, how it was happening, and see what the kind of the markers are, and you can tell when someone drops. When most people drop, it actually would be really hard to re-engage them because sometimes they're just personal reasons that they drop. So yes, we've so not a satisfying answer. Maybe we've thought about it, we've observed it. We're looking at. It's unclear how to re-engage them. So one of the interventions we're trying right now is email engagement. So once they kind of start to drop out of the system, we can come back to email and try to re-engage them. The other part is to try to amp up Fittlebot. So we're to try to get Fittlebot to engage them. And in fact, the new versions, we're trying to create a more one-on-one relationship with Fittlebot. So people that may have different personalities and they feel like they're kind of loners, but they're okay being in this, well, we see that they do actually talk to Fittlebot, which is interesting. And nobody was abusive to Fittlebot, which was good. Which I don't think will happen I think will happen in a much larger study. I'm sure people will be very abusive to Fittlebot. So we have some potential intervention strategies to try to engage it. We just haven't studied it yet. But yes, yeah, we're looking at it. And not only this dropout issue, but kind of that tapering at the end is how do you transition them to the next challenge? How do you get them motivated enough to say, oh great, you got to 5K, would you be willing to go to 10K? But here's probably the most important thing that's missed. If you look at most of the programs that are out there, what are you supposed to do when you finish a program? Anybody know?
Sign up for another one.
No, not necessarily. So you just lost 50 pounds. What's next? Maintain. Have you seen the maintenance programs for a lot of what's available out there? You should take a look. It's pretty awful. So great, you've spent all this effort and all of this work, and you've lost 50 pounds. And now what do people do? Oh, well, I've lost it. So they'll maintain. But what happens is they start introducing bad habits, habit after habit after habit, until they're back to where they started. And actually, if you look at the literature, they're actually worse than when they started. So they yo-yo back, they've actually gained more weight. And they've regained all the habits. So it's important, and I think it's very important for long-term habit change and habit formation, is you got to keep reinforcing that. But you have to mix it up, you have to give them more information. You have to provide them deeper information. That's what the personal trainers do. They constantly give you deeper information. So people become hungry for information, and even if they're just maintaining, that's why personal trainers are so effective. They constantly give you and feed you information, let you pull, and they keep you up, keep your habits, and then periodically remind you. Go back to, and we've looked at possible intervention strategies of going back to some of the early ones, like maybe we should throw in a mix. Like once the mindful eating part disappears after week 3, maybe we should later on come back and throw in just one day. Hey, maybe you should think about are you still doing your mindful eating? Just try that today, just make sure you're keeping it up. So there's a reinforcement to do with the individuals. That maintenance is a huge issue, and that's where we think a lot of the failings are right now on most of the programs is they've failed to transition you into that maintenance phase and keep you in that maintenance phase and reinforce your habits over time. So we've done some ethnographic work in the field, and we've studied people that are in 20-week programs, and they're so scared when they leave those 20-week programs, they actually sign up to take the 20-week program again. And these are people that have a lot of intrinsic motivation. They want to lose weight. Talked with a gentleman who was 430 pounds. Since January, he's lost 117 pounds. He's in the program going through it again, through 20 weeks. And we showed him access technology, and we could just see that this echoed on everything that individual wanted. It had the social group tie. The reason why they were coming back is because of the groups, the social groups. It also would allow them to keep getting information. So when you're in these 20-week programs that are run by a lot of medical centers, there's a lot of information, and it's overwhelming. You're asking someone to kind of completely change their life. You're feeding them a lot of information. They're getting to know a whole bunch of new people. A lot of times you've done meal replacement, or in some cases, maybe you're recovering from bariatric surgery, which is a whole other ball of wax. So you're going through all these lifestyle changes. In fact, if you look at bariatric surgery, so the best programs out there, you know how many weeks of training people, kind of lifestyle change training people get before they go through bariatric surgery? 10 weeks. So 10 weeks of trying to kind of help you out, and then you go through surgery, and then you're on your own. There's a lot of programs that just do the surgery. No behavior change. They just completely replumb how you digest food. And that's pretty scary. We feel like, you know, that's an easy solution for surgeons, but a lot of this weight could be lost just by behavior change. And there needs to be a way to kind of scale it for the population and get people engaged. So maintenance is the next thing. If we can pick up that and go into maintenance, that's what we're looking for. I think we do see there's a couple effects. Weather effects do seem to affect how people exercise. That's a good opportunity to, so we didn't anticipate that. Most of the time the weather's nice in California. We didn't expect it to be 100. We didn't see that, about 18 weeks out when we were planning this. But if we had alternatives, we just didn't have anything in the system to offer. And I think that's why you see a little bit of dropout. Also, they knew it was going to end. But you also see them coming back week after week. So I'm asking people, they come back because there's some social conversation that's going on. So people still are talking after the fact. So there's some challenges. How do we transition? How do we raise the bars? We haven't done those interventions yet, but that's kind of on the next schedule of things to do. And it's also hard. This is still small. I mean, this is what kind of see in a lot of papers. It's very small for us. We want to be looking at tens of thousands of users. That's where we're going next. We have an opportunity at the beginning of 2014 that we should be doing a very large deployment to get tens of thousands of users. And that's where we can start to isolate these effects and start to understand the group dynamics. And we'll see some of the numbers come down. I feel that we'll probably still beat current state of the art with engagement, just because it does, if we can build this critical mass, but a lot of it is hinging on how well we can team and transition and move people. That was a long answer. We covered a lot of ground.
All right, well, we better stop there. Thank our speaker again. And Michael will be meeting with students for the next 2 hours in room 130, and faculty too, if you want. So I'm sure you can continue discussion there.
But not Mrs. Nate, or Mrs. Nate's mom. Very little feedback.
A lot of those are Some of the learning is
They mentioned, it'll be 6 months. Other than that, they need to report that time, which is why I asked them that.
Bring something.
And, we call that transfer learning. I think that the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's. You can get a big be able to pick up,
Right.
you know, like what you're saying, there's just changing the fact that they're responding to rewards.
So if they're
Yeah, I know.
failing,
Right, we need to know if they're
So-
stationary.
But the, none of corn, so I
So they
started
have
really
a-
never
maybe
baking
know what
soda,
the
and never really had a
so
complete
far.
understanding of
and
how.
that's, that will go into the schedulers and try to
I just
schedule
didn't
it.
really understand
And if they're
clinically.
failing, it's just. So we actually use a clip
Yeah.
based engine, because we get.
So I don't know if
we were
perhaps
on the iPhone.
If I understood that better,
And so
then
we
I might
have
be able to direct it, like maybe give some
production system that
ideas.
goes through.
Um,
But we do play with
A
the
little bit better, but to me,
So
the biggest
we
clinical
can
question
change the
is
order
how do you
rules
pick
so
up
that
when
they
they're
have
no
a
longer
question.
wanting
Just
to
by
respond
looking
to
at
an
certain
intervention, so that you
indicators
can
within
then
their feature vector.
redirect in a
So
way
what's
that's
like
going to
what's-
increase
so like
that
they're
response.
failing.
That seems like the
If,
most
well,
important
if
part, because you can always
historically
ask
they
them
constantly
what
need to be
motivates
reminded
you,
to
you
do
know,
something.
and start with
Then
that.
it would be like
But
they
the big thing is when that doesn't, when that's not motivating anymore, how do you change it and re-engage?
I just had a quick comment.
It almost sounds like we're talking about like a phase change. Like, it's just not working.
Yeah,
At
exactly.
which point we should get the nurse on
As
it.
long, I don't know if their license is
Well,
like
that, I
that.
mean,
just
that's
if you're
one of the
deploying
things,
them.
like booster sessions clinically, that's probably.
No, we're not, we're not deploying.
So like if we were doing the
Well, just so you're
notebook
putting-
intervention
Oh,
and people
right.
started like reducing, then
Like,
that
I
would be,
recognize that.
if we could pick that up, that that's
Yeah.
what's going on, yeah, then that would
Yeah, and the
be
images.
maybe like
were,
the smart home signal that, yeah, you need to
or
get someone
the
to do
challenges
more of a
are
literal
identified.
intervention if we can't
So we
have the
actually
system
have-
do something that would
We have
increase.
paid for all of the images
responding.
for the new.
Cause yeah, maybe it is something personal that's happening.
As well as
Maybe
the
something
logos.
else that needs to be taken
Yeah,
care
that's a
of
little
that the
bit-
system
yeah.
itself can't
Well,
take
okay.
care of.
Because
And
we
we
go
need to
through
try all
the
those
content.
things, because it also could be the flow, you know, that Michael was showing earlier in the slide,
I'm
and that it's just even tedious.
Remember about 15 minutes later,
So
right?
it's
Still like
some
a
way.
program.
Yeah,
I figure everyone's just
They're
gonna get
spending
there.
time, I'm not seeing, especially if my memory's declining, I may not be seeing particularly spectacular improvement.
I wouldn't have to miss
Why-
these because otherwise I'm gonna get
So
people sick.
some way to recapture their interest and motivation for doing it as well.
And you see that Ishwan went to
You
rescale?
should be seeing the
Yes.
complaints going up over time, and if it's going down, that should
Yeah,
be
I
something
actually
that
called
we
me.
can identify.
Right, and I think that's key, can we identify when that compliance starts going down?
Sure.
And
I
I mean,
then
that's
we
a
can
lot of it, because
intervene.
then we can
Yeah.
experiment
I think
with
we're still stuck in the
how
migrant-
to change things,
migrant
and
big
the
machine
detection
and
we can
administrative
automate for sure.
Oh, yeah.
The
Surprised
rewards
you
and
took
what's
that
gonna
off.
push their buttons, that's a much
It's
bigger
just
space.
changes.
Right, but, well, it's
Changed a little bit.
have they become non-stationary, they've changed what they want to do, or is it that something has happened and we need an intervention?
But even the detecting it,
But detecting it would
Have
be
that
really
data in here?
important.
I
I mean,
so there's
anything.
multiple
Yeah, but
categories.
That shouldn't be too
Oh,
hard.
yeah.
Yeah,
I wouldn't think so either, you have a.
so we're
classified
in the, we're in the
I mean, there were several here.
And you just
amount
look
of
at how it
time
goes
spent
over
and
So-
then
when A is like impossible, right? It's like A means that you're the best.
So could we make some
application
changes
ever
maybe
created.
to that section to
So nobody ever can get an A,
emphasize
so we're, I'm
maybe
pretty
that
happy we're in the C
aspect
plus
or
range.
the others?
That we
do
can't,
have
and
a few things. One
Kyle's
was like
gonna
the
be
big
starting on
contextual
this
shift for
whole
commenting,
phone.
is because we try to do everything a little bit more of an
Teacher
Ajax way, so
model.
kind of, on-demand open up. There's also some
Which is which,
context shifts that
in
can
the
impact
next
our
2
visibility.
weeks, so we'll have a
Awesome.
little
We've been-
more
We're
detail.
really trying to focus on.
Okay, well,
We
that'll
have
be
a,
good.
we have a designer,
So-
especially when I get back.
You should have up.
Thursday, I'm
There's
meeting
always
with
an
a designer
element
that's
of
gonna go over
this
They were
afternoon,
for-
like, and I
potential
usually
flows
have the
for
same
all
study
of that.
session or panel over and over again.
It's nice to have
And
a
I
big
think
team.
it was somewhat bad luck that somebody said, hey, aren't they funded for this? And so all of a
Yeah.
sudden, all the
Where's
reviews
a little
went
bit
south.
Well, you know, that happened in
It's
our
definitely- I mean, it's
before, and
a
I think we
group,
just have
it's
to
an
be really
organization, it's kind of
upfront.
flat.
So we just need to write something in there that says, this is what else we're doing and this is how this is taking.
And this is when
It's
I
Except
get
all
on
different.
professors.
This is
Yeah.
when
focused
IGERT
on
is
one
ending,
product.
because by the time this is
And so
funded,
you get a lot of opinions that you have to.
Right, and this is
I
definitely a
kind
different
of, well, they don't like me to say
direction
it,
than
but it's
other
the
research.
design
The
by
other thing,
committee,
I'm not sure
determined by
that they
committee.
really got, which I'm trying to emphasize a little bit more, is the bigger impact of this. Yes, we're working with the memory notebook intervention, but the impact beyond that from our ecological, momentary intervention, everything, it's just, well, I mean,
Moving
Yeah, it's been a lot of
kind of
fun.
the technology.
It's
that's
actually the only
needed.
project I've worked on, so.
Everyone's
Right.
waiting
You know,
upstairs
this
for
is kind of
him.
prototype.
He's already.
I'll,
Yeah.
yeah, I just said, I'll hope.
And the intervention part,
4:30, take you
yeah,
back
I
to
can
the
increase the
hotel.
sample
Okay.
size and I
Told me I
can
was
make
supposed to.
more of a
Sounds
reason.
good.
I mean, we're using
Thanks.
a,
I was
ABA
told.
design, so that
Well, I
increases
hope-
it in
We can
and
do
of
this
itself,
in
but
my
I can make more of a
Yes.
judgment for it. It's not like you can run study like this with 40 people here. You know, this is like really clinically heavy sort of work to do. And you wouldn't want to do that until you knew it really worked. Otherwise, it would be a lot of effort. So I'll just have to make more of an argument there.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Do we want to try to talk to the program director to find out more about what went on during that discussion?
I haven't, but I will.
Yeah, I think that would be.
I'll do that this week,
I'm always interested in hearing what actually happened at the panel.
right, rather than just speculating.
I was also wondering, like,
Right.
some of the things that I saw.
See you.
Okay, very good, see you then. Some of the things he was mentioning too, I wonder if we want to include any like motivational sayings that would help support like final change in attitude. So we can do like rewards and stuff that will help them, want to get a reward, and maybe this is, I guess this is less in line with what we're trying to do here with the intervention with the notebook, because people are going to intrinsically, once they see that it's helpful, it's going to assist them. But I guess I've been thinking a lot about like our other stuff we have to do when we're going to increase health promotion behaviors. And really the idea there is rewards are only going to work for so long, and then you really have to have some sort of change in the way that they're perceiving things. They really want to eat better, not that they just want the reward.
Yeah.
But maybe that's less of an issue for what we need to do for this particular study, but something to think about.
This is tough because I like a lot of what Michael brought to the forefront, and that is the social support. And it's tempting to put that in there, but then it would take the emphasis off of the technological innovations. Because I think that if you had high fives and likes from, or whatever the equivalent would be that older adults would want to see from children and grandchildren, that could
Oh,
give
that'd
them
be
a
good.
lot of support.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I think if we focused on individualizing who we're going to send these messages to or posts or whatever, I think that we could still do it. I don't want to go down the team direction. I think that would take us in a different path.
I mean, we could use a clinician approach too, but it would probably work better if it was someone like a grandchild.
Right.
we could beef up that section a little bit more we just kind of talk somewhat generically about rewards in terms of monetary incentive, which may not be as big for some of them. We could give a little more
Right.
detail about how when they complete a puzzle, for example, then a message is sent to a child or grandchild that they did it and they have the chance to respond instead of way to go, kind of reading.
Am I right to sit in here?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I have to go.
Yeah,
We're leaving soon.
yeah, I like that. I think that's good, yeah.
So we could send an SMS, or we automatically post to their Facebook page, which the kids would then receive a notification that there's been an update.
And even with the kids, you can have a link to a card that they can fill in and say, way to go, Grandma, and then it gets sent back.
Yeah.
So they see that.
Yeah, I like that.
So we could beef that up.
I don't know if this is something that we would want to include or not, but it might include some of the aspects of more the accountability. I don't want to say competition, but and we won't have this data right away, but we could just get some in terms of letting people know, like the typical person would have checked their notebook like a certain amount of times a day, just to have that accountability or have a goal set for them based on something. I mean, it could be an individual goal, or it could be, I guess it's like the picture where they could individually set their goal, like by the end of today or the end of this week, I want to have checked my notebook
I like that.
this many times.
And having, even what they did here with filling in the circles so they know where they are on that day. And then if they meet, every day that they meet their goal, they could be getting closer to filling in a puzzle, for example.
Yeah, and then it could be some of that selection strategy stuff, which would probably be
Right,
helpful.
so we don't decide for them, you need to use it this much. It's almost like a leaderboard then, if it's unattainable, it would be too discouraging. That's good.
And we're gonna know whether they're actually doing things that we want them
Right.
to do. Unlike, it seemed like Michael was just letting them say, oh yeah, I went for a walk.
Yeah,
Right,
self-accountable, right.
Yeah, we will.
I have to go, I'm sorry.
Where,
Okay.
where are we trying to put this?
Back
Send
to
it
the same
back.
thing, right?
To smart health and well-being.
Next year?
No, it's like in October,
It's on
I think.
October.
Oh, okay.
So how do we want to go from here? Do we want to meet again, or do we want to each try and take a stab at the sections we need to?
Let me send mail to the
Update.
program director first, and
Okay.
then we can use the response from him that I forwarded to all of you to kind of decide how to break this up.
Okay.
Because I also need to go back and look at all the requirements to make sure that it's not gonna cause problems for the one that you're writing with the song.
You're allowed to.
Do that too, okay, that's not a problem then. And I might be doing one with Aaron, based on some of the St. Luke's stuff.
Oh, you
Just
know,
to look at rehabilitation and readmission.
I'm using the idea of adaptive rewards in the other one too. Is that gonna be a problem?
I'll ask the program director.
Okay.
Well, they're different size, right?
The one with Hassan is the small one.
And this one's a big one.
Oh, is
So
it?
I don't
Okay.
think they'll even see each
Oh,
other.
well,
Completely different panels.
fine.
Yeah, that should be fine.
I don't think even the program director will necessarily see both. Because they have different people that run the individual panels, and sometimes, depending on how many panels they have.
Okay, good.
I